The Galactic Council chambers buzzed with the familiar hum of 100 different alien species conducting their eternal dance of politics and power. Ambassador Zethkar of the mighty Hegemony Empire leaned back in his crystalline chair, his four arms crossed in obvious disdain as he watched the holographic display showing the newest applicant species. The creatures on screen were bipedal, covered in soft skin, and possessed only 2 arms and 2 legs. Their technology appeared primitive by galactic standards, and their military consisted of chemical propulsion rockets and crude kinetic weapons. Humans, he scoffed, the translator converting his contemptuous clicking into standard galactic. Look at them. Soft, weak, barely capable of interstellar travel. They've only just managed to establish colonies on 3 worlds beyond their home system. What possible contribution could such a pathetic species make to our great alliance? Around the circular chamber, representatives from dozens of advanced civilizations nodded in agreement. The crystalline collective's ambassador, her translucent form shimmering with internal light, pulsed with amusement. Their weapons technology is thousands of years behind ours. I've seen their so-called nuclear weapons, crude fission devices that would barely scratch the hull of one of our scout ships. High Chancellor Vextor, a towering reptilian being whose species had ruled the Council for over 2 millennia, raised a scaled hand for silence. His ancient eyes, having witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, studied the human data with practiced analysis. Nevertheless, they have achieved faster-than-light travel independently. That alone grants them the right to petition for membership. Zethkar's mandibles clicked with irritation. Chancellor, with all due respect, allowing every primitive species that stumbles upon FTL technology into the Council diminishes our prestige. The humans have nothing to offer us. No advanced technology, no unique resources, no military might worth considering. They're barely above the level of the Grolic herders from the Outer Rim. The comparison drew harsh laughter from several delegates. The Grolic were known throughout the galaxy as one of the most peaceful and technologically backward species ever encountered, content to tend their livestock on remote agricultural worlds. Their military records are particularly amusing, added Admiral Cross of the Void Hunters, his cybernetic implants gleaming as he accessed the data directly through his neural interface. They still fight wars among themselves, using projectile weapons and chemical explosives. Their largest military vessels are slower than our cargo transports, and armed with weapons that couldn't penetrate civilian hull plating. The human delegation, seated in the petitioner's section, remained silent throughout the mockery. Ambassador Sarah Chun, a woman in her 40s with prematurely gray hair and eyes that had seen too much, kept her expression carefully neutral. Beside her sat General Marcus Torres, whose weathered face showed no reaction to the alien's dismissive comments, and Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's foremost xenobiologist, who was quietly recording everything for later analysis. Sarah had expected this reception. The intelligence reports from their first contact teams had prepared her for the Galactic Council's arrogance. For over 3,000 years, these species had dominated this region of space, building an empire that spanned hundreds of star systems. They viewed themselves as the pinnacle of evolution and technology, looking down on younger civilizations the way adults might regard children playing with toys. Ambassador Chun, Chancellor Vextor's voice boomed across the chamber. You have heard the concerns of the Council. How do you respond to the observation that humanity brings little of value to our alliance? Sarah stood slowly, her movements measured and dignified despite the hostile atmosphere. Honored Chancellor, esteemed delegates, humanity may indeed be young compared to your ancient civilizations. We may lack the advanced technologies that you have perfected over millennia, but we bring something else to this alliance, something that I believe has been forgotten in your long reign of peace and prosperity. Zethkar's laugh was like grinding metal. And what might that be? Enthusiasm? Primitive courage? Please, enlighten us with the wisdom of your barely space-faring species. Adaptability, Sarah replied simply. Innovation born from necessity. the hunger to overcome impossible odds. She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed images of Earth's history. My species has survived ice ages, plagues, wars that nearly destroyed our civilization, and resource crises that should have led to our extinction. Each time, we found a way to not just survive, but to emerge stronger. Survival against natural disasters hardly qualifies as military prowess, Admiral Cross interjected. Your species has never faced a real enemy, something with technology centuries ahead of your own. General Torres finally spoke, his voice calm and measured. With respect, Admiral, you might be surprised by what desperate people can accomplish when their backs are against the wall. The comment drew more laughter from the assembled delegates. Admiral Cross's cybernetic implants flashed with amusement. General, I've reviewed your military history. Your greatest conflicts involved armies numbering in the millions using weapons that fire small metal projectiles. My flagship alone could sterilize your homeworld from orbit before your forces could even detect its presence. Dr. Vasquez leaned forward slightly, her scientist's mind working rapidly as she observed the aliens' reactions. She noticed something that the others seemed to have missed, a pattern in their dismissiveness that suggested it was more than just arrogance. These beings were genuinely unable to conceive of threats from supposedly inferior species. Their technology had advanced to such a degree that they had forgotten the lessons of struggle and innovation. Chancellor, Sarah continued, her voice steady despite the mockery surrounding her. We ask only for the chance to prove our worth. Grant us provisional membership, and we will demonstrate that humanity has something valuable to contribute to your alliance. Provisional membership? Zethkar's four arms gestured wildly in what his species considered an expression of incredulity. You want us to grant you access to our trade networks, our technology, our military protection. Also, you can eventually prove you're not completely useless? The Council has granted provisional membership to 17 species over the past millennium, Sarah countered. Each was given the opportunity to demonstrate their value before full integration. Each of those species possessed advanced technology or unique resources, Chancellor Vextor replied. The ethereal minds brought quantum consciousness transfer technology. The stone forgers possessed mineral extraction techniques that revolutionized our construction industry. The void dancers had mastered interdimensional travel. What do humans possess that we lack? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah felt the weight of her species' future pressing down on her shoulders. She knew that this moment would determine whether humanity would join the galactic community as equals or remain isolated on the periphery, watching from afar as other civilizations reached heights they could never achieve alone. Unpredictability, she said finally. In a universe where every conflict has been fought with the same advanced technologies for centuries, where military doctrine has remained unchanged for millennia because no one dares challenge the established powers, we bring the ability to think differently, to see solutions that centuries of technological superiority have made you blind to. Admiral Cross's laugh was harsh and mechanical. Unpredictability? You mean chaos. Primitive flailing in the dark. There's a reason military doctrine has remained stable, human. It works. Our combined fleets have maintained peace in this sector for over 1,000 years. Peace through overwhelming force, General Torres observed. But what happens when that force meets something it doesn't understand? Something that doesn't follow the rules you've established? Nothing in this galaxy possesses military technology capable of challenging the Council's combined might, Zethkar declared with absolute certainty. We have weapons that can crack planets, shields that can withstand star-level energies, and ships that can travel faster than light while remaining completely undetectable. What could possibly threaten such power? The confidence in his voice was absolute, shared by every delegate in the chamber. These beings had never faced a real challenge to their supremacy. Their technology was so advanced, their coordination so perfect, that they had become complacent. They fought their occasional conflicts with established protocols, using weapons and tactics that had remained unchanged for centuries because nothing had ever required them to innovate. Dr. Vasquez caught Sarah's eye and nodded almost imperceptibly. She had seen the same things Sarah had noticed, the fundamental weakness hidden within their greatest strength. Their technology was so advanced that they had lost the ability to adapt, to improvise, to fight dirty when necessary. They were like master swordsmen who had never faced an opponent willing to pick up a rock. "Honored Chancellor," Sarah said, "I propose a simple test. Grant humanity provisional membership for one standard galactic year. If, during that time, we fail to demonstrate our worth to the Council's satisfaction, we will withdraw our petition and accept whatever limited trade relationship you deem appropriate." The chamber fell silent as the delegates considered this proposal. It was, on the surface, extremely generous to the humans. They would gain access to galactic technology, trade routes, and knowledge that would advance their civilization by centuries. If they failed to prove their worth, they would still retain whatever they had learned during their provisional year. And what happens if you do prove your worth? Chancellor Vextor asked, his ancient eyes studying Sarah with new interest. Then, humanity becomes a full member of the Galactic Council, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. Zethkar's mandibles clicked with amusement. "This is absurd. We're seriously considering granting advanced technology to a primitive species on the slim chance they might eventually contribute something meaningful. What's next? Teaching fire to cave dwellers and hoping they invent faster-than-light travel. The human proposal is not without precedent," Chancellor Vextor mused. "However, it does present certain risks. Granting access to our technology to a species that has not proven their wisdom could have unfortunate consequences." Admiral Cross leaned forward, his cybernetic implants processing tactical scenarios at superhuman speed. "I propose a modification to their suggestion. Grant them provisional membership, but limit their access to non-military technologies. Trade networks, scientific data, cultural exchanges, but no weapons, no defensive systems, no military intelligence. If they can prove their worth without the tools of war, then perhaps they deserve consideration." "An excellent compromise," Zethkar agreed immediately. "Let the humans play with civilian technology. When they inevitably fail to contribute anything meaningful, they'll have no one to blame but their own limitations." Sarah exchanged glances with her colleagues. The restriction was expected. No council would grant military technology to an improving species. But it also revealed their adversaries' fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. They assumed that without advanced weapons, humanity would be helpless. They had no concept of asymmetric warfare, of turning civilian technology into weapons, of fighting with improvised tools against superior forces. "We accept your terms," Sarah said formally. 1 year of provisional membership, with access limited to non-military technologies and systems. Chancellor Vextor raised a scaled hand, and the chamber's voting system activated. Holographic displays appeared before each delegate, showing 3 options: accept, reject, or abstain. The voting was rapid. Most delegates seemed eager to end what they considered a waste of time. The results appeared on the central display. 847 votes to accept, 23 votes to reject, 156 abstentions. The overwhelming acceptance wasn't born from respect for humanity's potential, but from confident dismissal of any threat they might pose. To these ancient civilizations, humans were an amusing curiosity, primitive beings who might provide some entertainment value before inevitably proving their inferiority. "The motion is approved," Chancellor Vextor announced. "Humanity is granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council for a period of 1 standard year, with the restrictions outlined by Admiral Cross. Ambassador Chun, you will receive access codes and protocols within the next solar cycle." As the session ended and delegates began filing out of the chamber, Sarah could hear their conversations. Jokes about human primitiveness, bets on how quickly humanity would embarrass itself, speculation about which civilian technologies they would break first. The mockery was unanimous and absolute. Zethkar approached the human delegation as they prepared to leave. His forearms spread wide in what might have been a gesture of false magnanimity. Ambassador Chun, I want you to know that I bear no personal animosity toward your species. You're simply out of your depth here. This galaxy is ruled by civilizations that have mastered the laws of physics to degrees your scientists cannot imagine. We've built weapons that harness the power of black holes, ships that can phase through solid matter, defense systems that create pocket dimensions. What could a species that still uses chemical rockets possibly contribute to such advanced technology? Sarah met his gaze steadily. Perhaps, Ambassador Zethkar, the question isn't what we can contribute to your technology, but what we can contribute to your thinking. The alien's laugh followed them out of the chamber, echoing off crystalline walls that had witnessed the submission of countless primitive species over the millennia. But, as Sarah walked away, she was already planning. The council had made their first mistake. They had underestimated human ingenuity. Their second mistake would be far more costly. General Torres waited until they were safely aboard their transport before speaking. They have no idea what they've just unleashed. Dr. Vasquez nodded, her scientific mind already working through the possibilities. Their technology is incredibly advanced, but it's also incredibly specialized. They've forgotten how to innovate, how to adapt existing tools for new purposes. Everything they build has a single, predetermined function. And we're about to show them what humans can do when we get our hands on their toys, Sarah added grimly. They think they're granting us access to civilian technology. They don't understand that to humans, there's no such thing as purely civilian technology. Everything can be weaponized if you're desperate enough and clever enough. As their ship departed the council station, heading back toward human space, none of the three humans spoke about their real mission. The Galactic Council thought they had granted humanity a chance to prove their worth through peaceful contribution. They had no idea that they had just handed Earth's military the greatest intelligence coup in human history. Direct access to advanced alien technology and detailed information about the most powerful military force in the galaxy. The mockery would continue for months as human delegations visited council worlds, as human scientists studied alien technology, as human diplomats carefully mapped the complex web of alliances and rivalries that held the galactic government together. The aliens would laugh at every human question, every apparent misunderstanding, every request for clarification about systems they considered elementary. They would continue laughing right up until humanity's first strike turned their most powerful battle fleet into expanding clouds of debris, and the galaxy learned that there was a very good reason why humans had never faced an enemy with technology centuries ahead of their own. They had always been too busy becoming that enemy. 6 months into humanity's provisional membership, the mockery had only intensified. Across the galaxy, human delegations were treated like amusing pets. Their questions about council technology met with condescending patience by alien scientists who couldn't fathom why such primitive beings needed explanations for concepts they considered basic. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the pristine halls of the Crystalline Collective's primary research facility on Nexus Prime, surrounded by towering aliens whose translucent bodies pulsed with internal light as they processed information at superhuman speeds. She had been asking questions about their quantum resonance communicators for 3 hours, and her hosts were growing visibly amused by her apparent confusion. Dr. Vasquez pulsed Research Director Lumtar, his crystalline form shifting through spectrum of blues and greens that indicated polite condescension. Perhaps the concept of quantum entanglement cascades is too advanced for your current understanding. Your species has only recently discovered basic quantum mechanics, yes? Elena nodded enthusiastically, playing her part perfectly. Oh yes, we're still struggling with the fundamentals. Could you explain again how the cascade effect maintains coherence across galactic distances? Our physicists back home are having trouble with the mathematics. The aliens exchanged what passed for amused glances among their species. Lumtar's glow shifted to the warm yellows of patient instruction. Of course, the cascade utilizes nested quantum fields that create self-reinforcing stability matrices. Each communicator contains a crystalline core that maintains entanglement with its paired devices through dimensional resonance. As the alien scientist launched into his explanation, Elena's enhanced contact lenses recorded every detail while her neural implant processed and cataloged the information. Hidden beneath her skin, microscopic sensors mapped the quantum signatures of the technology around her. To the crystalline collective, she was a primitive human struggling to understand advanced concepts. In reality, she was one of Earth's most brilliant theoretical physicists, secretly documenting the technical specifications of communication technology that allowed instantaneous contact across the entire galaxy. The irony wasn't lost on her. The aliens were so confident in human inferiority that they answered every question with complete honesty, never considering that their explanations might be used for purposes beyond academic curiosity. They saw Elena's detailed inquiries as proof of human primitive thinking, too simple to understand without extensive explanation. Meanwhile, halfway across the galaxy, General Marcus Torres walked through the military shipyards orbiting Hegemony Prime, escorted by Admiral Cross himself. The cyborg warrior had insisted on giving the human general a personal tour, viewing it as an opportunity to demonstrate the vast gulf between human and Council military capabilities. "This is the eternal conquest," Admiral Cross announced with obvious pride as they approached a massive dreadnought that stretched for over 20 kilometers. One of our newest Zeus-class battleships. Her primary armament consists of 12 graviton pulse cannons capable of generating artificial black holes, supported by quantum torpedo launchers and molecular disruptor arrays. Marcus nodded appreciatively, his eyes wide with apparent awe as his enhanced contact lenses recorded detailed specifications of every weapon system, shield generator, and propulsion unit visible through the observation deck. Incredible! How does the ship prevent its own weapons from affecting its structural integrity? Elementary physics, Cross replied, his mechanical voice carrying clear amusement. The ship's hull incorporates quantum-locked matter held in dimensional suspension. The graviton weapons create localized space-time distortions that affect only targets beyond the ship's protective field matrix. Fascinating, Marcus murmured, while his implants calculated exactly how such protective fields might be overwhelmed by coordinated attacks on their quantum coherence points. And the propulsion system? Dimensional fold drives that compress space-time along predetermined vectors. We can travel faster than light while remaining completely undetectable to conventional sensors. Cross gestured toward the massive engines visible through transparent hull sections. The technology is based on manipulating the fundamental constants of reality itself. Marcus asked question after question, each one making him appear more impressed and more helpless in the face of such overwhelming technological superiority. Cross answered every inquiry with detailed explanations, never realizing that he was providing complete technical specifications to someone who had spent 30 years learning to identify weaknesses in seemingly invincible systems. On the industrial world of Forge Alpha, Ambassador Sarah Chun sat in a boardroom with representatives from a dozen major council corporations, discussing potential trade agreements. The aliens viewed these negotiations as an opportunity to exploit human naivety, offering to purchase Earth's primitive resources in exchange for outdated council technology. "We would be willing to provide you with basic replication technology," offered Trade Minister Vexcol of the Hegemony Empire, his forearms gesturing dismissively. "Perhaps some elementary medical equipment. In exchange, we would require exclusive access to your planet's rare Earth elements and biological samples." Sarah pretended to consider the offer carefully, while her implants recorded the exact specifications of every piece of technology mentioned in the contract proposals. "That seems reasonable. Although I confess, I don't fully understand how your replication technology works. Could you provide more detailed technical documentation?" The aliens exchanged amused glances. Of course, Vex Cole clicked. Though I doubt your scientists will be able to comprehend the quantum matrices involved. The technology requires precise manipulation of atomic structures at the subquantum level. We're eager to learn, Sarah replied humbly. Even if we can't immediately understand the principles, having the technical documentation would help our scientists begin studying the concepts. What the council members didn't know was that hidden throughout human space, the greatest minds of Earth's scientific and military communities were working around the clock to analyze every piece of information gathered by their infiltration teams. Dr. Chinwei, director of the Prometheus Project, stood in a vast underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, surrounded by holographic displays showing detailed schematics of alien technology. The quantum resonance communicators are actually vulnerable to cascade feedback, he announced to his team of researchers. If you can introduce a properly calibrated interference pattern, the entire network destabilizes. We could theoretically disrupt their communications across multiple star systems simultaneously. Nearby, weapons specialist Dr. Sarah Kim studied the specifications of Council graviton weapons. These black hole generators require massive amounts of energy to maintain stability. But look at this, they use a centralized power distribution system. If you could overload the primary conduits, the entire weapon array would collapse into itself, finished Dr. Martinez, the team's expert on exotic physics. And the energy feedback would probably cripple the ship's main power grid. In another section of the facility, cyber warfare expert Colonel David Park examined the data on Council ship navigation systems. Their dimensional fold drives are incredibly sophisticated, but they rely on quantum positioning beacons throughout Council space. If those beacons were compromised, their ships would be flying blind, Dr. Chen concluded, unable to navigate accurately through folded space, forced to rely on conventional faster-than-light travel that would take weeks instead of hours. The pattern was becoming clear across every system they analyzed. The Council's technology was phenomenally advanced, but its very sophistication created vulnerabilities. The aliens had built their weapons and defenses to counter other advanced civilizations using similar technology. They had no concept of asymmetric warfare, no preparation for enemies who would use their own systems against them. Back on Council worlds, the human intelligence gathering continued with increasing sophistication. Military attaché Lieutenant Colonel James Wright had managed to gain access to Council strategic planning sessions, ostensibly to help humanity understand their defensive obligations as provisional members. The Council maintains approximately 12,000 active warships across 3 main battle fleets, explained Fleet Commander Zarketh of the Void Hunters during a strategic briefing. Our primary formations are concentrated around the galactic core, with secondary forces protecting major trade routes and colony worlds. Wright nodded thoughtfully, his enhanced memory recording the exact positions and compositions of every fleet mentioned. How do you coordinate such vast forces across galactic distances? Through the quantum communication network, of course. Every ship maintains constant contact with Fleet Command through paired quantum resonators. Orders can be transmitted instantaneously to any vessel in the fleet, regardless of distance. The human officer tried to look impressed while his tactical mind processed the implications. A centralized communication system controlling 12,000 warships, all dependent on quantum resonators that Dr. Vasquez had already learned how to disrupt. If that network could be compromised at a critical moment. And what about backup communication systems? Wright asked innocently. Zarketh's cybernetic implants flickered with amusement. Backup systems? Lieutenant Colonel, our quantum network has operated flawlessly for over 800 years. What could possibly disrupt technology that operates outside normal space-time? The question revealed everything Wright needed to know about Council military thinking. They had become so dependent on their advanced technology that they had forgotten the basic military principle of redundancy. Their entire command structure could be crippled by attacking systems they considered invulnerable. As the months passed, human agents gained access to increasingly sensitive information. The Council's confidence in human primitiveness had made them careless. They shared technical specifications, strategic doctrines, and operational procedures with the same casual indifference they might show when explaining basic mathematics to children. Dr. Vasquez attended advanced seminars on quantum field manipulation. General Torres observed large-scale military exercises. Ambassador Chen participated in high-level diplomatic meetings where council leaders openly discussed their deepest concerns and greatest weaknesses. The Outer Rim rebellions have been contained, Chancellor Vextor announced during one such meeting, but they highlight our ongoing logistical challenges. Our supply lines are stretched thin across such vast distances, and the rebels have learned to target our automated cargo convoys. Sarah listened with apparent polite interest while her implants cataloged every detail about Council supply vulnerabilities. The aliens spoke freely about their strategic concerns, never imagining that the primitive human in their midst might use such information against them. Back on Earth, the intelligence was being transformed into something far more dangerous than the Council could imagine. Human engineers studied alien replication technology and found ways to corrupt its programming. Human physicists examined graviton weapons and discover how to turn them into bombs. Human tacticians analyzed fleet formations and identified the exact sequence of attacks that would cause maximum chaos. Their entire military doctrine is based on overwhelming technological superiority. General Harrison, Earth's supreme military commander, explained to a gathering of the planet's top military leaders. They've never faced an enemy that understood their technology well enough to turn it against them. They don't even have protocols for that scenario. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Galactic Council, masters of the galaxy for thousands of years, had built their entire civilization on the assumption that their technology would always be superior to any potential enemy. They had created the most powerful military force in galactic history, but they had also created the most vulnerable one. "How long before we're ready?" asked Admiral Susan Chun, commander of Earth's Space Forces. 3 more months to complete our analysis and prepare the specialized weapons systems, General Harrison replied. 6 months if we want to be absolutely certain of success. And if the Council discovers what we're doing, they won't, Dr. Chunwei interjected confidently. Their arrogance makes them blind to the possibility that we could pose a threat. To them, we're still the primitive species that builds rockets with chemical fuel and fights with metal projectiles. The assessment was accurate. Throughout Council space, human activities were monitored with the casual attention paid to potentially dangerous but ultimately harmless animals. Council intelligence services filed regular reports noting human curiosity about advanced technology, human questions about military capabilities, human participation in diplomatic discussions. But these reports were filed under cultural exchange activities and primitive species integration programs. No one in the vast Council bureaucracy considered the possibility that humanity might be conducting the most sophisticated intelligence operation in galactic history. The idea was literally inconceivable to minds that had never encountered a threat from a supposedly inferior species. Admiral Cross reviewed the monthly report on human activities with the same bored attention he gave to livestock inventory reports. Humans continue to display excessive curiosity about Council technology, the report noted. Recommend continued patience with their primitive attempts to understand advanced concepts. No security concerns identified. He filed the report without a second thought, never realizing that he had personally provided General Torres with the technical specifications needed to cripple the Council's most powerful weapons. The irony would have amused him if he had been capable of recognizing it. As humanity's provisional membership period entered its final months, the Council prepared for what they expected to be an amusing conclusion to an entertaining experiment. Bets were being placed on exactly how humanity would fail to demonstrate their worth. Some aliens wagered that humans would accidentally destroy themselves with advanced technology they couldn't comprehend. Others predicted that humanity would simply admit their inferiority and withdraw from consideration. None of them bet on the possibility that humanity would demonstrate their worth through the total annihilation of the Council's primary battle fleet. That oversight would prove to be the last mistake the Galactic Council would ever make. The Prometheus facility had grown far beyond its original underground complex in the Rocky Mountains. Hidden construction projects across Earth had created a network of interconnected research centers, manufacturing plants, and testing facilities that would have impressed even Council engineers if they had known about them. But the Council's monitoring systems, designed to detect advanced alien technology, completely overlooked the primitive human construction taking place in their own space. Dr. Chun Wei stood before a holographic display showing the final assembly of humanity's greatest secret, the Pandora weapons platform. To any Council sensor, it would appear to be nothing more than an unusually large cargo vessel, its hull plates concealing the most sophisticated weapons ever designed by human ingenuity. Status report. He called to his team of engineers and scientists scattered throughout the massive assembly bay. Quantum cascade disruptors are online and calibrated, reported Dr. Sarah Kim. We can target the Council's communication network from a range of 12 light-years. Once activated, their quantum resonators will experience catastrophic feedback that will propagate through their entire network. Graviton reversal arrays are ready for deployment, added Dr. Martinez. We've programmed them to interface with Council weapon systems and reverse their polarity fields. Their own black hole generators will implode their ships from the inside. Colonel Park looked up from his cyber warfare station. Navigation beacon corruption protocols are loaded and ready. Once we activate them, every Council ship using dimensional fold drives will find themselves scattered randomly across the galaxy, most of them materializing inside stars or asteroid fields. Dr. Chin nodded grimly. Estimated casualties? Total, replied General Harrison, who had arrived for the final briefing. The Council has no backup systems, no redundancy protocols, no contingency plans for this type of attack. Their entire military structure will collapse simultaneously. The weapons they had created were unlike anything seen in galactic history. Rather than trying to match Council technology with superior versions of the same concepts, humanity had approached the problem from a completely different angle. They had studied the interconnected nature of Council systems and designed weapons that would turn the aliens' greatest strengths into fatal weaknesses. Are we certain this is necessary? Asked Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had returned from her intelligence mission to oversee the final preparations. Perhaps we could demonstrate our capabilities without completely destroying their fleet. General Harrison's expression was stone cold. Elena, you've seen their military doctrine. You've read their strategic assessments. They view military strength as the only measure of civilization's worth. If we reveal our capabilities gradually, they'll adapt and eventually overwhelm us through sheer numbers. We have one chance to demonstrate that humanity cannot be dismissed or conquered. We have to make it count. The truth was more brutal than anyone wanted to acknowledge. The Council's reaction to humanity's provisional membership had revealed their true nature. They were not a benevolent alliance of advanced civilizations working together for mutual benefit. They were an empire built on the assumption of eternal technological superiority, one that would never accept humanity as equals unless forced to do so through overwhelming demonstration of power. Ambassador Sarah Chun had witnessed this firsthand during her months of diplomatic missions. Behind their polite condescension, Council leaders spoke openly about their plans for humanity's future. Earth would become a client state, its resources extracted to benefit Council worlds, its population relegated to second-class citizenship. Human culture would be gradually absorbed and forgotten, replaced by Council customs and values. They're planning a celebration, Sarah reported during her final intelligence briefing. A grand ceremony to mark the end of humanity's provisional membership and our inevitable failure to demonstrate worthiness. Representatives from every Council species will gather at their primary naval base to witness our official rejection. The irony was perfect. The Council was assembling their most important leaders and their most powerful military assets in a single location to mock humanity's supposed inferiority. They had created the ideal target for humanity's first strike. Dr. Vasquez pulled up detailed schematics of the Council's primary naval base at Nexus Station. 12,000 ships in close formation, minimal spacing between vessels to accommodate the observation fleet. Their defensive systems are calibrated for attacks from outside the system, not from weapons platforms already inside their security perimeter. How do we get weapons platforms inside their security perimeter? Asked Colonel Wright, recently returned from his own intelligence mission. We didn't, Dr. Chin smiled coldly. We're going to build them there. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. For months, human trade vessels had been delivering seemingly innocent cargo to Council worlds. Raw materials, primitive Earth products, cultural artifacts, all carefully inspected by Council customs agents who found nothing more threatening than basic organic compounds and simple metal alloys. What they had missed was that those innocent materials, when combined in specific quantities and configurations, could be assembled into weapons that would make Council technology irrelevant. Humanity had learned from their own history. The same chemicals used in farming could be converted into explosives. The same metals used in construction could be forged into weapons. The same electronics used in communication could be reprogrammed for warfare. The components are already in position, reported Major Lisa Park, Colonel Park's daughter, and the mission's logistics coordinator. 3 months of deliveries have placed everything we need within striking distance of every major Council facility. Our sleeper agents can begin assembly on your signal. Those sleeper agents were perhaps humanity's greatest achievement. Volunteers who had undergone extensive biological and psychological modification to appear as various Council species. They'd spent months infiltrating alien societies. To Council security, they were loyal citizens who had earned their positions through years of dedicated service. In reality, they were Earth's most elite special forces operators, prepared to execute the most complex sabotage mission in history. Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos, surgically modified to resemble a member of the Crystalline Collective, had spent 4 months working as a maintenance technician at the primary quantum communication hub. Her colleagues trusted her completely, never suspecting that she had been systematically installing modifications that would turn their communication network into a weapon. Captain Robert Kim, altered to appear as a Hegemony Empire cybernetic hybrid, held a senior position in their military logistics division. He had access to the supply codes for every major weapon system, and had been quietly introducing subtle modifications to their ammunition and spare parts. Major Jennifer Walsh, disguised as a member of the gaseous Void Hunter species, worked in fleet maintenance and had installed hidden programs in the navigation computers of over 200 Council warships. When activated, those programs would send the ships directly into the nearest star. The preparation phase had been the most dangerous part of the operation. Discovery at any point would have meant not just the failure of their mission, but the complete annihilation of human civilization. The Council would have responded to such a deception with overwhelming force, turning Earth into a lifeless cinder as an example to any other species that might consider challenging their authority. But the Council's arrogance had been humanity's greatest protection. The idea that a primitive species could successfully infiltrate their most secure facilities was so absurd that they had never developed protocols to prevent it. Their security systems were designed to detect advanced alien technology, not clever humans using improvised weapons and biochemical disguises. Final systems check, General Harrison announced as the command center prepared for the operations launch phase. All teams report readiness status. Across the galaxy, humanity's hidden agents confirmed their positions. At Nexus Station, the celebration was beginning. Council leaders had gathered to witness what they expected to be humanity's humiliating confession of inadequacy. The irony was delicious. They were about to witness a demonstration of human capability that would shatter their understanding of military power forever. Admiral Chun, fleet status? Harrison called. All vessels ready, for simultaneous emergence. Admiral Chen reported from her command ship, hidden in the outer system darkness. Stealth systems engaged, weapons charged. We'll be in position 60 seconds after you give a signal. The human fleet was small by Council standards, only 40 ships total, including support vessels and logistics craft. But each ship had been designed specifically for this mission, incorporating everything humanity had learned about Council technology and tactics. They were not intended to win a prolonged battle against superior numbers. They were designed to deliver a single, devastating blow that would cripple the entire Council military structure. Dr. Kim, biological weapons? Harrison continued. Deployment ready, came the reply from a mission's chief biochemical specialist. The pathogen is species-specific and will affect only Council leadership DNA patterns. Symptoms will appear within hours of activation, but the real effect is psychological. When their leaders start collapsing simultaneously across multiple worlds, it will create panic that our conventional attacks cannot achieve. The biological weapon was perhaps humanity's most controversial creation. It wouldn't kill Council leaders, but it would incapacitate them for several weeks with symptoms that would appear to be the result of an unknown alien plague. The fear of biological warfare would spread faster than any actual disease, creating chaos throughout Council space as species began to suspect each other of biological attacks. Colonel Park, cyber warfare, all systems compromised and ready for activation, Park confirmed. Their banking networks, communication systems, power grids, and transportation networks are all running modified code that will activate simultaneously. Within minutes of our attack, every Council world will experience total infrastructure collapse. Psychological warfare team. Major Tom Rodriguez, Earth's expert on alien psychology, looked up from his analysis station. Propaganda broadcasts prepared in 47 alien languages. The message is simple. Humanity's technological capabilities far exceed what we've revealed. This attack was a demonstration of restraint, and any attempt at retaliation will result in the complete annihilation of Council civilization. The psychological component was crucial to the mission's success. The goal wasn't just to defeat the Council militarily, but to convince them that resistance was futile. They needed to believe that humanity possessed capabilities so advanced that further conflict would be suicidal. All teams, this is command. Harrison spoke into the galaxy-wide communication system that connected every human agent, sleeper operative, and fleet unit. Operation Prometheus is authorized. Execute in T-minus 60 seconds. Across the galaxy, humanity prepared to reveal its true nature. The species that the Council had dismissed as weak and primitive was about to demonstrate why humans had never faced an enemy with technology centuries ahead of their own, because they had always been too busy becoming that enemy. As the countdown reached its final seconds, General Harrison allowed himself a moment to consider the magnitude of what they were about to accomplish. For thousands of years, the Council had ruled the galaxy through technological supremacy and overwhelming force. In the next few minutes, humanity would prove that intelligence, creativity, and the willingness to fight dirty could overcome any technological advantage. 10 seconds, he announced. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Execute. Across the galaxy, humanity struck with a coordination and precision that would have been impossible for any Council species to achieve. The aliens had grown complacent in their technological superiority, forgetting that the most dangerous enemy was one that understood your weaknesses better than you understood them yourself. The celebration at Nexus Station was about to become a funeral for galactic civilization as the Council had known it. And from the ashes of their defeat, humanity would emerge not as supplicants begging for acceptance, but as the new masters of the galaxy. The age of human dominance was about to begin. The celebration at Nexus Station was in full swing when humanity's first weapon activated. Admiral Cross stood on the observation deck of his flagship, the Infinite Dominion, surrounded by the greatest military minds in Council history. They were watching holographic displays showing Earth's final diplomatic submission, prepared statements where humanity would formally acknowledge their unworthiness for council membership. Ambassador Sarah Chun appeared on the primary display, standing in what appeared to be the same council chamber where she had first petitioned for membership a year ago. The assembled alien dignitaries leaned forward with anticipation, eager to witness the formal humiliation of the primitive species that had dared to think themselves equals. "Honored council members," Sarah began, her voice carrying across the station to thousands of alien leaders. "1 year ago, humanity requested provisional membership in your alliance. You granted our request, while making it clear that you considered us unworthy of your respect." Laughter rippled through the observation deck. Zethkar's 4 arms gestured in amusement as he clicked to his companions. "Finally, the primitive species acknowledges reality. Today, we wish to demonstrate exactly how unworthy we are," Sarah continued. And something in her tone made Admiral Cross's cybernetic implants flicker with sudden alertness. "Humanity has learned much during our year of provisional membership. We've learned about your technology, your military capabilities, your strategic doctrines. Most importantly, we've learned about your weaknesses." The laughter began to die as delegates noticed the subtle change in the human ambassador's demeanor. Gone was the humble deference they had grown accustomed to. In its place was something cold and confident that sent ripples of unease through the assembled aliens. "You see, the Council made a fundamental error in your assessment of humanity," Sarah said, her image now displaying the controlled intensity of a predator revealing itself to its prey. "You assumed that because our technology appeared primitive, our thinking was equally primitive. You forgot that the most dangerous enemy is not the one with superior weapons, but the one who understands your weapons better than you do." Admiral Cross was already moving toward his command station when the first system's failure occurred. The quantum communication network that connected every ship in the fleet suddenly screamed with feedback alarms as Lieutenant Commander Santos activated the modifications she had spent months installing. "What's happening?" Cross demanded as his bridge crew frantically tried to restore communications. "Sir, the quantum resonators are experiencing cascade failures," reported his communications officer. "The entire network is destabilizing. We're losing contact with all fleet units." Across the massive council fleet, 12,000 ships simultaneously lost their ability to communicate with each other or with fleet command. The quantum entanglement fields that had operated flawlessly for 8 centuries suddenly collapsed in a chain reaction that propagated through every paired device in council space. But the communication breakdown was only the beginning. Captain Kim's modifications to council ammunition began activating as weapons systems attempted to respond to the crisis. Graviton pulse cannons designed to generate artificial black holes suddenly found their containment fields reversing polarity. Instead of projecting destructive force outward, they began imploding inward, creating gravitational anomalies within the ships themselves. The Eternal Conquest, the massive dreadnought that Admiral Cross had personally shown to General Torres, was among the first casualties. Its primary armament activated in response to the communication crisis, but the modified graviton generators immediately began consuming the ship from within. The 20-kilometer vessel folded in on itself in a matter of seconds, its quantum-locked hull providing no protection against the artificial black holes forming inside its own weapon bays. "Impossible!" Zethkar screamed as he watched the pride of the hegemony fleet destroy itself. "Our weapons don't malfunction. The technology is perfect." On the holographic display, Sarah's image smiled with cold satisfaction. "Your technology is perfect, Ambassador. Unfortunately for you, we've learned to make it perfectly lethal to its users." The next wave of attacks targeted the Council's navigation systems. Major Walsh's hidden programs activated throughout the fleet, sending false coordinates to ships attempting to escape using their dimensional fold drives. Vessels that tried to retreat found themselves materializing inside asteroid fields, planetary atmospheres, or the coronas of nearby stars. Ships that attempted to jump to reinforcement positions appeared randomly scattered across the galaxy, their navigation computers corrupted by months of subtle sabotage. Admiral Cross watched in horror as his mighty fleet began tearing itself apart. Ships collided with each other as their navigation systems provided false positioning data. Weapons platforms fired on their own allies as corrupted targeting systems identified friendly vessels as hostile. The tight formation that had been designed to showcase Council military might become a death trap as weapons fire and gravitational anomalies chain-reacted through the assembled fleet. Emergency protocols. Cross-ordered. All ships switched to backup systems. Sir, his tactical officer replied with barely controlled panic. The backup systems are experiencing the same failures. Every quantum-based technology is compromised. The truth was dawning on the surviving Council leaders. This wasn't a conventional attack using superior weapons. This was something far more terrifying. Their own technology turned against them by an enemy who understood their systems better than they did themselves. Ow! Chancellor Vextor demanded, his ancient voice cracking with disbelief. How could a primitive species accomplish this? Sarah's image on the display seemed to be looking directly at him. Because you taught us how, Chancellor. For an entire year, your people answered our questions with the patience of teachers instructing children. You explained your technology, your tactics, your strategic thinking. You gave us detailed, technical specifications because you were so certain we could never understand them well enough to pose a threat. As if summoned by her words, the human fleet finally revealed itself. Admiral Chen's ships emerged from stealth at the edge of the system, their previously invisible hulls becoming visible as they dropped their cloaking fields. To Council sensors, the human vessels appeared absurdly primitive, angular metal constructions that looked like enlarged versions of the chemical rockets they had mocked a year ago. But appearances were deceiving. As the human ships opened fire, they revealed weapons that made Council technology seem crude by comparison. Instead of trying to match the aliens' graviton weapons or quantum torpedoes, humanity had created something entirely new. Weapons that existed in multiple dimensional phases simultaneously, making them impossible to intercept or defend against. The first salvo from a human fleet passed through Council defensive shields as if they didn't exist. Energy barriers designed to stop conventional weapons provided no protection against projectiles that existed partially outside normal spacetime. Armor plating that could withstand stellar-level energies was pierced by weapons that attacked molecular bonds directly. Their weapons are primitive. Admiral Cross screamed in denial as his flagship's shields failed to even register the incoming human fire. Kinetic projectiles. Chemical explosives. How can they penetrate our defenses? The answer came as his ship's hull began dissolving at the molecular level. Humanity hadn't tried to build better energy weapons or more powerful missiles. Instead, they had created weapons that operated on entirely different principles. Nanoscale disruptors that unmade matter at the atomic level, temporal displacement fields that aged targets to destruction in seconds, dimensional shears that severed the bonds holding atoms together. But the physical destruction was only part of humanity's attack. Across Council space, the biological weapon was taking effect. Leaders who had gathered to witness humanity's humiliation began collapsing as the species-specific pathogen activated in their systems. The sight of their leaders falling simultaneously across multiple worlds created exactly the panic Dr. Kim had predicted. Species began accusing each other of biological warfare. Ancient tensions resurfaced, and the political unity that had held the Council together for millennia began to fracture. The cyber attacks were equally devastating. Colonel Park's hidden programs activated throughout Council infrastructure, causing power grids to fail, transportation networks to collapse, and banking systems to corrupt their data. Within minutes, every major Council world was experiencing societal breakdown as their technology-dependent civilizations found themselves unable to function. This is impossible, Chancellor Vextor whispered as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. One species cannot defeat our entire civilization. We have weapons that can crack planets, fleets that can sterilize star systems. Sarah corrected him gently. You had those things. Now you have expanding clouds of debris and scattered survivors trying to understand how their invincible technology was turned against them. The scope of the disaster was becoming clear. Of the 12,000 ships that had gathered at Nexus Station, fewer than 200 remained intact. The survivors were scattered, their communication systems destroyed, their navigation computers corrupted, their weapons either inoperable or turned against their own vessels. But more than just ships had been lost. The psychological impact of the attack was equally devastating. For thousands of years, the Council species had defined themselves by their technological superiority. They had built their entire civilization on the assumption that their advanced science made them invulnerable to any threat. That assumption had just been shattered by a species they had dismissed as primitive. "What do you want?" Zethkar demanded, his forearms trembling with rage and fear. "Surrender? Tribute? The enslavement of our worlds." Sarah's expression softened slightly, showing the first hint of the diplomat she had pretended to be for so long. "We want what we've always wanted, Ambassador. Respect, recognition as equals, the right to exist and develop without interference. You could have asked for that without destroying our fleet. We did ask. For an entire year, we demonstrated our capabilities in peaceful ways. We showed you our adaptability, our problem-solving skills, our ability to learn and innovate. But you were so convinced of our inferiority that you saw our greatest strengths as amusing weaknesses." Admiral Cross, standing amid the wreckage of his command deck, finally understood the magnitude of humanity's deception. The questions, all those primitive questions about our technology. You weren't trying to understand it. You were looking for ways to exploit it. "We were learning," Sarah confirmed. "Every explanation you gave us, every technical specification you shared, every strategic doctrine you revealed, we recorded it all. Then, we spent months figuring out how to turn your own technology into weapons against you." The surviving council leaders exchanged horrified glances as the full implications sank in. Their condescending patience with human curiosity, their willingness to explain advanced concepts to supposedly primitive minds, their complete openness about military capabilities, all of it had been carefully orchestrated by an intelligence operation more sophisticated than anything in Council history. The trade delegations. Chancellor Vextor realized with growing horror. The cultural exchanges, the diplomatic missions, they were all gathering intelligence. And planting weapons, Sarah added. For months, human vessels delivered the components we needed to build weapons inside your most secure facilities. Your customs agents inspected every cargo container, every shipping manifest, every trade good. They found nothing threatening because they were looking for advanced weapons, not simple materials that could be assembled into something far more dangerous. Dr. Vasquez appeared beside Sarah on the display, her scientist demeanor replaced by the cold competence of a military intelligence officer. Your security systems were designed to detect technology equivalent to your own. You never considered that an inferior species might use superior intelligence to create weapons that worked on entirely different principles. The final phase of humanity's attack was just beginning. Across the galaxy, sleeper agents emerged from their deep cover positions to begin the next stage of the operation. Infrastructure that hadn't been destroyed by cyber attacks was systematically disabled by human operatives who had spent months earning their targets' trust. Supply lines were severed, command centers were captured, strategic resources were seized by people their owners had never suspected of hostile intentions. "This is terrorism," Admiral Cross accused, his cybernetic implants flickering as he struggled to process the scope of humanity's deception. "Sabotage, guerrilla warfare. These are not the tactics of a civilized species." General Torres appeared on the display, his weathered face showing no sympathy for the aliens' outrage. "These are the tactics of a species that knows it's fighting for its survival against overwhelming odds. You taught us that the Council respects only strength. We're showing you exactly how strong humanity can be when we stop pretending to be weak. The demonstration was complete. In a matter of hours, humanity had accomplished what should have been impossible: the complete destruction of the most powerful military force in galactic history. They had done it not through superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but through intelligence, creativity, and the willingness to fight without honor or restraint. What happens now? Chancellor Vextor asked, his voice hollow with defeat. Sarah's image solidified into a final, formal diplomatic posture. Now, humanity joins the Galactic Council as a full member with all the rights and privileges that entails. The provisional membership period is over. We've demonstrated our worth. By destroying our civilization, by demonstrating that our civilization cannot be destroyed, Sarah corrected. The Council spent a year trying to prove humanity's inferiority. Instead, you taught us everything we needed to know to make ourselves the dominant species in this galaxy. You created your own replacement. As the transmission ended, the surviving council members stood amid the wreckage of their fleet and the ruins of their assumptions. The galaxy they had ruled for millennia was gone, destroyed not by superior aliens from another dimension, but by the primitive species they had dismissed as unworthy of their respect. In the depths of space, Admiral Chen's fleet began the process of securing Council space. Human forces emerged from hiding throughout the galaxy, revealing the true scope of their infiltration. The species that had been mocked as weak primitives were now the masters of galactic civilization. The age of Council dominance was over. The age of humanity had begun. And, across the galaxy, alien species that had been subject to the Council for thousands of years began to receive a new message from their new human overlords. We are humanity. We came in peace, seeking only respect and equality. You taught us that the galaxy respects only strength. We are prepared to rule with the same wisdom and benevolence that you showed us. The irony was perfect. The Council had created the very enemy they had always feared, a species capable of challenging their technological supremacy. They had done it through their own arrogance, their own condescension, their own absolute certainty that primitive humans could never pose a threat to advanced alien civilizations. They had been right about one thing: humans were not like other species. They were far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. And now the galaxy belonged to them.